What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to another video. Thank you so much for being here. I'm Writer Reacts. You know, I just came back from an amazing week. Disney World, on the happiest place on earth, not Denmark, which is ironic because Denmark and Copenhagen and Tivoli Gardens specifically is exactly where Walt Disney got the ideas for Disney World. If you go in Tivoli Gardens, there's a little dragon at the top that looks exactly like Pluto. And after 8 long, amazing, beautiful days down at Disney World, I came back and I thought, okay, I'm starting to get the Sundays. I gotta go to work on Monday. What can I do to get myself back into the flow of things? What can I do to kind of just relax and just have a good time? And then I thought, oh yeah, Captain America Brave New World finally came out. Well, I might as well go see it. And so I sat down alone, because if you haven't gone to the movies alone, do it. It's so transcendental. You don't have to worry about everybody else that you're with. You don't have to worry about anybody else's thoughts and opinions. You can just sit there and watch. And so I did. And I was aware of all of the drama and the marketing errors and the reshoots and the CGI problems that was going on with Captain America. And it finally came out. And I was expecting an abhorrent train wreck. And honestly, I was kind of entertained. So we're gonna go through some of Captain America Brave New World and see how it really landed against the critics, against what it was supposed to be. Where does it fit in the MCU and where do we go from here? And does it really deserve the criticism that it garnered before and during? Just so you know, this is the non-spoiler version. I'll be posting the spoiler version sometime later. Now, overall, I was entertained. I came to see some action, I got that. I came to see some drama, I got that. I came to see some political deep state workings, I got that. I can see where they were going trying to make it a Winter Soldier remake. There were so many things that I thought, wow, that's almost juxtaposed directly from Winter Soldier into here, just with new actors and a new premise. But there were a lot of scenes that were almost like carbon copies of Winter Soldier to here. I could see what they were going for. They wanted this real political action thriller, exactly like what they got with Captain America in the Winter Soldier. And Captain America Brave New World, I felt was just almost there. There were things in there that really hindered it, but at the same time, it was still, for the most part, somewhat of a cohesive story, all things considered, given everything that's happened in the past 2 years. To me, it's like a car driving on the highway, and the highway speed limit is 70 miles an hour, and you're in a car that's going 65. 65 might be a little bit generous, but it felt like I could see where they were going, but there was just a little more that needed to be done for it to actually be what they wanted it to be. Now, there were so many things that happened in the middle that made it not what they wanted it to be, but also I understand, like, there were characters where I felt like the pacing was off. The acting was great. I understand what everybody's intentions were, what held them back, what their needs were, and what their wants were. I believed in some of the relationships to an extent. And this isn't to the fault so much of the actors as much as it was the editing. What was left on the cutting room floor, what was in the film and what wasn't in the film, and what was reshot. Especially that one scene. Stick around for the spoilers. It felt rushed at some times, but it was still salvageable. There were still moments in there that I was like, oh, that's an interesting nugget to play with, especially with Sam being the new Captain America, albeit a few years later, after Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which I feel like it hindered the passing of the torch a little bit because this is the first time we're seeing Sam as Captain America. And it really needs to make a statement now with everybody else that's in the film. Again, like a lot of Marvel movies these days, I felt like Captain America was playing second fiddle in his own film. The same thing happened with Doctor Strange, playing second fiddle to Wanda's character arc. Now, I'm not saying I'm mad about the nuances of the characters that they were showing, because ultimately I would love to see a Marvel movie about them on their own, but it was a continuation of so many things. You had to do so much homework, almost more so than you actually would for any other Marvel movie, because this was homework that you had to do from 17 years ago. And oh my God. And then because of that, for those people who didn't do their homework, people who didn't go back and watch previous movies that they may or may not know were in the MCU or not, they ended up burying you in the beginning with so much exposition. I was like, oh my God. Now we knew from the trailer that Harrison Ford was coming in to play Thunderbolt Ross after William Hurt sadly passed away last year. Rest in peace. And we know that General Ross from the Incredible Hulk movie has a daughter named Betty Ross. But there's a line in there that if you hadn't seen the Incredible Hulk movie, you wouldn't know who his daughter is. And so he literally goes to his White House aide. He goes, "Have you heard from Betty, my daughter?" And I'm like, unless there's 1,000 Bettys in your cabinet, you should not have to say to the closest aide in your cabinet that this person is your daughter. That is purely for the audience, and you could see right through it, and unfortunately that kind of stuff just took me out of the story. Now back to the pacing of the story. There were a lot of things in there that were really good, but at the same time there were a lot of things now that they just cut for the sake of cutting. And all of a sudden the character went from being here to being all the way over here, and it's very Game of Thronesy, and that's just some little stuff that I noticed. It doesn't really matter too much, but at the same time, if you want to talk about pacing, there's a lot of jumping around and a lot of things that happen very quickly that came off as a little jarring, but at the same time, otherwise, it's fine. You could tell that this was a clay work of art, that there were just pieces put here and there and things were worked around. And I will say though that despite the product and entertainment value that I found myself enjoying, by the end, I will say I've never felt like I could see the seams in a movie more than I did here. There were parts in it where you're like, okay, this character was clearly just shoved in here like Tetris because last minute they needed this person. I'm still bitter about my boy Seth Rollins, but I love Giancarlo Esposito. I will say, I think they could have given him a little bit more in this movie, but at the same time, he did what he was given, and he always brings gravitas to his roles. And I think that's kind of where he is now in his career. He's just brought in to bring gravitas with his voice, with his demeanor. I don't care if he's in his mid-60s. That guy can be menacing. If he's staring you down the barrel, all I'm seeing is Gus Fring, and I am terrified. And that guy doesn't even have superpowers. I'm pretty sure he can probably shoot to kill too, but whatever. But when there was a pacing shift, you could feel where the editing was taking place. You could feel where things were just dropped because they didn't work. You could definitely feel the reshoots, and especially in certain parts because either they didn't have time for certain CGI to come to fruition, they didn't have time to complete rendering, or they didn't have time to match up the lighting on a green screen, on a sound stage, and there was a lot of stuff that was just ADR. And if you're watching the back of somebody's head and just their jaw, and it's not lining up with what they're actually saying, yeah, that's a pretty obvious mistake in ADR that you probably shouldn't be making given the budget that Captain America had. I think given what they were given with the death of William Hurt and also the changing climate, because again, Captain America Brave New World coming out in this day and age around this specific time is very gutsy. And to that point, I felt like if you were going to do that, if you were going to make a statement about a political thriller coming out in Marvel, just like Winter Soldier, just like Civil War, because they all had something to say. Every Captain America movie had something to say. And same thing with Captain America Brave New World. Where do we fit in this changing world? And that's one theme that I really, really enjoy. I felt like they just slightly underpressed the gas pedal in it. I'm not taking away from the performances because my God, Anthony Mackie and Harrison Ford, they brought it. My God, did they bring it. Harrison Ford's at the point where he can just phone in his performances and get a paycheck, but he reached out to Marvel, remember, for this. And the work he does, I was invested. I was floored by his performance. I felt so much for his character that I never felt with General Ross before, and it's only because of Harrison Ford and the depth and emotion he brought to this character, and I was so enamored by it. And Sam trying to find out for himself who is Captain America under Sam Wilson. And that is an amazing journey because not only is he going to be Captain America, but hopefully throughout in the future, maybe he will be the one to lead the Avengers towards Secret Wars, towards Doomsday. But finding out who he is, finding out his origin story and the work that he has to put in to be the next Captain America, to earn that shield that he accepted from Cap. That is gold right there. And if you can really tap into it with the proper editing and give it the proper breath and room that it needs to grow all the way to maybe the Avengers movies, then you are good. It was great here. I love seeing his struggle. I love the fact that, it's Sam Wilson, he's just the common man. Yes, he's ex-military. Yes, he's got the great technology from the Wakandans and everything that we saw in Falcon and the Winter Soldier. But at the same time, he's still just a man. And to that point, I understood where they were trying to go with him just being a man and not being able to fit in with all of these superheroes, with all of these grades, with all this invincibility and everybody who took the serum and things like that. But at the same time, there were some things in the movie that I was like, I don't know, like what you're trying to say with him and what you're actually saying with him by what you're showing versus telling doesn't really line up. And I think that was one issue that they had, is that not only did they tell a lot more than they showed, in my opinion, I felt like what they showed versus what they told was kind of at loggerheads, because at times I listened to them and I was like, oh, that's a really interesting point. That's a really interesting flaw or vulnerability in the character. And then it really didn't seem to matter later on in the film with a scene that they were showing. And I was like, oh, wait a minute. You said the thing. So why this thing? And that kind of stuff just gets in the way of building a proper arc, of seeing a character's growth to fruition, because a lot of that stuff, it really doesn't lend itself towards proper storytelling and proper building, because if you're constantly contradicting who this character is, then we are never going to be invested in it, because we won't have the trust and faith in the writing to actually believe in who this character is. Now, I don't think that's the fault of Sam. I don't think that's the fault of Anthony Mackie or the acting. I purely think that that's the fault of the editing and possibly the writing, if this was the original plan. Because I would have liked to see, and this is from a pure screenwriter point of view, if I'm writing a character, if I'm writing a hero or a babyface or whoever, I'm writing them to be absolutely destroyed. If you're writing a character and the character is the good guy and you want to see them overcome odds, you almost have to be a sadist, because you have to put your character through absolute hell at every single turn, and they should barely just be getting over that hump. It shouldn't be too easy for them, because then they're not the underdog, they're not the hero. And I want that so much for my characters, especially characters who are finding out who they are and characters who don't have superpowers. Yes, they have high tech and everything like that, and that's really cool, but even Iron Man barely escaped certain battles by the skin of his teeth. I mean, for God's sake, he got stabbed by Thanos in Infinity War and only made it out because of Doctor Strange. But overall, I was entertained. Would I see it again? Probably not, although I'm going to, just to make sure that the spoiler review is as intact as possible. It was okay. Does it deserve the criticism that it's been getting? I don't think it deserves abhorrent. I do think this is probably the worst Captain America movie. Do I think it's the worst Marvel movie? Hell no. That movie is forever reserved for the Marvels or Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. If I had the time zone, I'd go back and get my 18 bucks back, because my God. But like I said, I was entertained. It was a good Sunday. I didn't have to go all menu because I didn't hate the movie that much. I wish it could be better. I saw where they were trying to go. I could see their vision, and that's the most frustrating part. I saw their vision because I could see where they wanted to go with it, and they just pieced together what they could because of all the reshooting and all the editing and all the things in the political climate that changed, and I understand, but this is what they had, and they saved themselves from it being a far worse movie. I see the setting up things in the future, reintroducing certain characters, and I think we're on a good path towards Avengers Doomsday. And there you have it, folks. That is the Captain America Brave New World non-spoiler review. Stick around later for the spoiler review that will be coming out sometime later. Let me know what you thought of Captain America Brave New World in the comments down below. But please be kind to the people who haven't seen it. Don't leave any spoilers. Leave that for the spoiler review. Let me know what you thought. If you like this video, guys, leave a like, share, comment, subscribe, hit that notification bell so you never miss a video. Check out everything else we got going on the channel. Check out here, check out Patreon. Thank you to all my patrons. I couldn't do any of this without you. Like I said, be on the lookout for the spoiler review. I'll be posting that shortly. From one artist to another. Stay creative, and I'll see you again.